Welcome back, my grim little subscribers, all three of you. I do appreciate all of you watching, even if you aren't subscribed. But you should really think about subscribing. There's lots of good stories out there. They say you can tell a lot about somebody by the way they eat. Some nibble, some gorge, some savor every bite like it's their last. And there are the quiet ones, the ones that sit in the corner, unremarkable, unmemorable. That is until the moment they open wide. Tonight's special, just $7.99, all you can eat. And trust me, darling, someone's still hungry. The man in the oversized gray suit eased into the corner booth nearest the salad bar, careful to position himself where he could see the entire dining room. He was starved. Very nearly, he had reached his wit's end. He could not help how the suit hung off him now, but he knew to anyone looking on he was just another weary businessman. His plain face vouched no particular age. The color of his hair, neatly cut and plainly combed to the left. It might have been brown, dishwater blonde, or auburn, depending on which angle the light caught it. The newspaper he held before him sagged, worn and limp in his hands. The newspaper he held sagged, its edges softened by repeated folding. He doubted the waitress would notice its dated headlines. One of the most important things he did was to show nothing worth remembering. When she arrived to take his order, he asked for the most ordinary dish on the menu. His voice was measured, straightforward but unremarkable. She scribbled on her pad without looking up. He kept his arms flat on the table, hiding the way the suit's sleeves threatened to engulf his wrists. Only after she turned back did he lift the water glass and take a deliberate, dainty sip. The dining room buzzed with low conversations and clinking cutlery. He drew up the newspaper again, the limp pages a camouflage of disinterest, while he leveled his eyes above the top edge. He watched the dining room. He shuffled the pages for effect a moment later, then reached out and raised the glass to his lips again. The water did not diminish. When the waitress returned with his meal, he smiled faintly and declined steak sauce. He'd requested his potato dry. After she'd moved on, the man spent a particularly long time working his steak slowly and meticulously under knife and fork. Each morsel, speared on his fork, made the slow journey to his mouth. But when no one was looking, and no one ever seemed to look, he slipped each bite into a pocket of the satchel beside him. To anyone paying only idle attention, the man would indeed look like he was slowly consuming his dinner. But the man had not eaten for uncounted days, and worried that if tonight did not go well, he'd be forced to starve uncounted days more. He continued his furtive vigil throughout his feeding facade. Slim patrons crowded around the salad bar, picking at greens and fruits. Others indulged in burgers and fries, though their toned frames hinted they'd burn off the calories before morning. The man in the gray suit frowned. Even the heavier diners seemed restrained, their portions modest. Finally, his plate was clean, its contents fully hidden inside the satchel. He feigned another sip of water, then picked up the worn, outdated newspaper and resumed his faux perusal to make time. A fly landed on the potato skin and began to clean its legs, eyelash thin. The man did not shoo it away, as others in the restaurant might have. Instead, he watched it idly as it went about its grooming ritual. Just then, outside the nearest window, a frantic chirping erupted. The man gently swiveled his head to peer through the glass at a nest in a bush by the establishment's wall. A mother bird had returned to her nest, bringing nourishment to her offspring. The chicks were still too young to take solid matter. The man could see, but they needed only to open their mouths, and a wonderful, predigested curd would fill their stomachs. What a selfless creature, the bird. If only its young knew how lucky they were. His musings returned to the visitor on the potato skin. Perhaps the chick's meal had been a cousin of this fly. Maybe the two had munched side by side in the same garbage heap. The insect would never know what had happened to his relative, now in the bellies of the birds. It would know only that one day its maggot brother had disappeared, never to be seen again. The man watched the fly's mouthparts drop to the potato skin. Like the chicks, the fly, too, could not eat solid food. It, however, held an advantage. the ability to predigest its own food with a corrosive enzyme before taking the nourishment. The man smiled ruefully at the tiny creature. One could envy the independence of the fly. His nostrils twitched, and his attention wavering from these ruminations. Through the entrance, a couple arrived. Their bodies heaved and wobbled as they crossed the dining room. The man in the gray suit watched their short, broad forms, nearly wide as tall, their shapes reminiscent of mobile feed sacks. The two found a table close to the salad bar. With impatient hands, they waved the waitress over, hastily ordering meals without glancing at the menu. Before the waitress had finished scribbling on her notepad, the two stood again and descended on the salad bar. Their attack was merciless and unrelenting. The couple used tongs as deftly as extensions of their own arms. The plastic pinchers snapped up lettuce, clutched chicken wings, and throttled pasta. Plates tottered, laden with piles of disorderly clumps, which were immediately wolfed down back at the table. The man in the gray suit watched the ways in which the couple took advantage of the salad bar until, before too long, the waitress provided them with 2 tall stacks to keep them sated. Yet even those towers had dwindled by the arrival of the main course. The meals were devoured with no diminished appetite, as though the couple were as desperately starved as the man in the gray suit. After swabbing clean the plates of even parsley, the couple patted their ample stomachs and confided to one another, almost in tandem, that each felt ready to burst. They laughed and then signaled for fresh plates to strip the dessert bar clean. The man in the gray suit waited. To calm his desperate anticipation, he thought of a nature show he had watched last night about a certain type of spider who makes his living by pretending to be an ant, roaming the peripheries of ant hills while wearing the shape of an ant, making the movements of an ant. His disguise so well honed, he even wiggles his front legs in the fashion of an ant antennae. And when the spider hungers, he need only pounce on the unsuspecting citizen of the hill and devour it. No one is ever the wiser. The man in the gray suit's eyes darted back to the couple. They rose to their feet, heaving considerably increased girths from the table and waddling towards the door. They passed by his table on their way out. He inhaled deeply, like a person enjoying the aroma of freshly baked bread. He left the waitress a tidy tip, enough to be polite but not memorable, then followed them outside. The setting sun threw warm colors skyward. In direct contradiction to the hue, a cold wind shuffled fallen leaves across the concrete. The man allowed anticipation to quicken his step. An observer might think he was escaping the sudden chill, but in truth, the thin man was more aware of the scampering leaves' quiet clatter and dry odor than the cold. He swiftly scanned the parking lot and immediately relocated his quarry. He tracked the couple to their car, a lime green station wagon that creaked under their weight. His own vehicle, nondescript, parked nearby, was ready. He slipped inside, started the engine, and let them take the lead. Their route wound through quiet streets, growing more residential with each turn. He followed at a safe distance, headlights dimmed, careful not to draw attention. At one corner, for a desperate second, the man in the gray suit thought he had lost them and felt alarm widen his throat. Thankfully, halfway down the block, he caught sight of the car in the driveway of a house. As he passed, he saw the couple's 2 ample forms silhouetted the front doorstep. He parked around the corner, retrieved his satchel from the passenger seat, and strolled casually down the sidewalk until he reached the hedge separating their yard from the street. There, he crouched and waited. A soft breeze set the leaves fluttering, and he felt their movements stroke his cheeks. He smiled at the pleasant sensation while waiting for the house to go dark. At about midnight, it did. Still, he waited. It was easier now that he was here. The anticipation, an unbearable weight while stalking, took on in these moments a pleasant drone. Through the shifting leaves, he watched the lingering whirl of the constellations. When Aldebaran shifted just enough to mark the hour, he moved. The French doors at the back of the house were locked, of course, but a sharp twist of the handle broke the mechanism. Inside, the house was plush and overstuffed with billowy sofas and massive lazy boys. He crept through the living room into the stairwell. Resting one hand lightly on the balustrade, he listened to snores from the master bedroom grow louder. He ascended, his steps light on the carpeted stairs. The couple slept soundly, a moonlit heap filling the breadth of a king-size bed. He stepped to the closest sleeper. It was the husband. Gently, the man in the gray suit pulled back the sheet, slowly, carefully, so as not to wake him. With the same gracefulness, he raised the nightshirt to expose the belly. The husband began to stir. His eyes, gummy with sleep, opened. A slurred protest began to form in his throat, but it was too late by then. The man in the gray suit stretched his mouth open to the human limit, then, with a sharp, wet pop, opened it wider until his chin pressed flat against his sternum. He lifted his tongue to the roof of his mouth, and a fleshy tube about the thickness of a pinky finger that tapered to the sharp point freed itself from the soft folds of his mouth parts. The first drop of fluid hit the man's skin, clear and viscous, just before the proboscis pierced him. The husband, awareness and alarm finally lighting his eyes, raised a hammy fist towards the man's face before dropping to the mattress with a soft thump. The wife snored on until the man, now filling his gray suit quite ably, finished. She stirred when the sheets were lifted from her too, but not for long. Just before dawn, the remnants of the couple ended up folded into the satchel. The pair fit quite snugly. All that remained of them were bags of skin, drooping with the weight of bones and withered viscera. There was a bridge on the outskirts of town. It was an early autumn morning. No one was out. No one saw or heard the heavy satchel splash into the lake. A passerby on the bridge might have noticed a man leaning on the guardrail who seemed stuffed inside clothes 2 sizes too small for him. This observer might have detected the man's exceptionally vibrant color, pleased and pink as a healthy baby's. But by the time this hypothetical onlooker reached the other end of the bridge, his mind would have returned to his own thoughts again. His job, his wife, the drama of his personal life. Because really, despite superficial details, there was no reason to remember the portly man in the gray suit on the bridge. He was wholly unremarkable. Well, wasn't that satisfying? Nothing like a good meal to leave you full, flushed, and maybe a little unsettled. Be careful on your way out, darling. This buffet never really closes. And who knows, maybe next time, you'll be on the menu. Got a story you'd like me to read? I would love to narrate it. Check out my email, awfullygrimyt@gmail.com. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this with someone that you'd haunt. This has been Awfully Grim. Thank you so much for watching.